What have you witnessed someone do that made you realize she is really, really smart? My wife's grandfather. He's a retired electrical engineer with a dozen patents to his name, and a long list of recognitions I can't be bothered to remember or name. I always knew he was brilliant, but never realized just how, until one day last year we were visiting and he got a phone call. Keep in mind he's been retired for 20 years and is 86 years old. The phone call was from an electrical engineering firm from halfway across the globe asking if they could fly him out to a site and have him consult on the energy capture of a hydroelectric dam they were building. They'd run into a problem that none of them, all electrical engineers, could solve. They had consulted 3 of the top related university departments in the US on the issue, and the last one had referred them to him 20 minutes on the phone, and he agreed to think about it. 2 days later he had solved their issue, and written the solution on a single 8x11 sheet of paper, which he scanned and emailed to the company. He said he took so long to write it up because he didn't want to have to fly all the way there at his age. His explanation was so clear I was able to understand and follow it with no relevant higher education. One time my drunk uncle was in jail and needed bail money, and being that my dad was the only one in the family with any real savings, they all looked to him to fork up 100% the cash. Having been asked, he realized this situation had 2 possible outcomes. 1. Pay for his bail and never get the money back. 2. Not pay for the bail and the whole family blame him for it. So, my dad decided to throw them a curveball. He told them that whatever the rest of the family raised for the bail, he'll not only match it, he'll offer double whatever they raised together. Nobody offered 1 cent. Blame averted. I had a teacher in high school that using both hands could write a sentence starting from the beginning and end simultaneously. He even split the middle word of the sentence. He also spoke around 5 languages. I was playing the card game Egyptian Rat Screw with some friends, and then all of us noticed that one of our friends was slapping a bit too fast to be believed. It turns out he was counting all of our cards and had each of our decks memorized, which is just insane. I was once in Chinatown and I saw this old Chinese guy with a bunch of groceries. He had tied the bags together by the handle and slung them over his shoulder. He looked ridiculous. The next week I was struggling with a lot of groceries and I remembered the old Chinese guy, stopped on the sidewalk, tied all my bags together, and walked home like the unencumbered dork I became that day. Not a person, but my parents' old dog. My mom would get bones from the butcher shop for their dog. They were long enough that the dog couldn't get all the marrow out of the center. The dog figured out that only my stepdad's truck was heavy enough to break them after experimenting with the other vehicles at the house. There was usually a bone in the same spot on the driveway every time I went home. In high school I had a friend who we made fun of all the time for being dumb, but he would have the wackiest ideas that would somehow work. One time, around Christmas of my sophomore year, a few of us decided to buy a 30-pack, and then later decided we didn't feel like drinking it that night. I couldn't keep it at my house, but one of my friend's parents was coming to pick all my buddies up. Nobody knew how they were going to get the 30 out of my house into one of their houses. Then my friend came up with a genius idea. He went upstairs in my house and wrapped the 30 in wrapping paper. He then proceeded to carry it right out to the car with our friend's mom waiting and say it was a gift for his girlfriend who he was going to be seeing later that night. I realized that not being great at school doesn't mean someone isn't. Ingenious. I knew 2 guys in undergraduate who would play mental chess. As they'd passed in the hall, one guy would say knight to queen 3 or whatever. The other guy would roll back his eyes for a second and then nod to acknowledge the move. Both guys then kept walking in opposite directions. Later that day, when they passed again, the second guy would declare his counter move. A game could last days and they never forgot where any of the pieces were. Each had a mental image of the board. Sure, they might have been faking, but these guys were always first and second on the dean's honor list for all 4 years of my undergraduate. I knew them pretty well. I think the mental chess was legit. Sitting in a best friend's apartment on the East Coast in the mid-1980s. He's working on some code on a prototype Unix workstation MIPS had given him. He runs his program, and it produces an answer. then runs it again and produces a different answer. Thinks about it for a minute and pronounces the CPU is broken. Right, the CPU is broken. Never heard that one before. Has it occurred to you that? Yes, it had occurred to him. Went through 3 or 4 scenarios. Then he pulled out the machine level debugger and started stepping through the code. Look, right here. The flags weren't updated right in this instruction. Yeah, whatever. Sends email on the brand new internet to MIPS. Gets a response the next day. Oh, you have that CPU. We have verified your issue. We will put a replacement in the mail promptly. His CPU was broken 30 minutes from diagnosis to request to repair. I was at my desk waiting to make a purchase over the phone, and I mentioned to a co-worker that I always have to pull my credit card out. I should have this number memorized by now. Another co-worker overheard that and said, "I know your Visa number," and spit it right out. After I got off the phone I asked him WTF, and he said he heard me say it a couple weeks earlier. Numbers just stick with him that way. I already knew he was a bright guy, but that took it up a notch. Older brother always was terrible at school. I can remember him straight up asking why he needed to graduate high school and then again in college. He then accepted a low-level job after graduation in marketing that ultimately fell apart due to the company executives screwing up big time. During all of it he somehow was able to keep a small client and within 7 months of working was promoted to their executive marketing director making 6 figures. Now he has multiple clients on the side and is always scheming something up. Dude is as hard-headed as they come but nonetheless a damn marketing genius. Blows my mind how far he has come. When you sit down in a meeting for work where you're trying to solve a big problem and someone can say, "That's the wrong question," you need to be asking. People who can do that generally understand the bigger picture and all of the various variables and factors in play and how everything fits together. It's some next level action to watch the entire room go, "Wow, we're looking at trees and that guy's looking at the forest." Lazy people are the best at this. I witnessed a kindergartner who couldn't draw straight lines, keep his pencil still and drag the paper around to draw a triangle. A kid in 2nd grade already knew algebra. Everyone knew he was smart. For April Fool's Day that year, our teacher decided to be cute and give us a pop quiz, so she went to the 8th grade class and asked for an algebra test. Made copies and handed them out to us. Some of the kids were freaking out and the teacher assured us that we already went over this. So, she left the room and some of the kids started crying. She came back in after a few minutes and said that it was just a joke, but she graded the tests anyways. The smart kid scored an 18/20. I never saw it myself because I was about 2 years old, but when my older sister was around 4 years old she used to go grocery shopping with my mom. My sister, would keep a running tally for all the items in my mom's cart. As my mom took something off the shelf my sister would ask the price and then would add it to the total in her head. If my mom put something back she would subtract it. My sister was right every time when they got to checkout. She's a doctor now. Edit. My sister also used to read the bedtime stories to my parents when she was around 2 years old. Goddamn genius. Meanwhile I'm the kid who ate Play-Doh. I like it when you meet someone whose English is imperfect, but you realize they are very intelligent and are able to explain their thoughts. I remember once meeting a Japanese archaeologist who wasn't the best English speaker, but when he explained his research to me it was absolutely fascinating. Go to plug my dad in here. Had some friends over and just to mess around we asked him the definition of random words in the dictionary. We opened it to the eyes and asked the definition of 10 to 12 letter, 3 to 4 syllable words. Not only did he nail all of them but most definitions were verbatim. When we got to the 10th word, he goes, the verb or the noun, and we lost our shit. It was seriously ridiculous. We were freshmen in high school and could hardly pronounce the words we picked. Turns out he read the whole dictionary over the summer when he was 16 and bored. Guy is still the smartest person I've ever met. My older brother has really bad ADD and always did terrible in school. I never realized how smart he was until a few years ago. We were watching Jeopardy together and he knew most of the answers to the most obscure shit. I was blown away. I swear it was like the scene from Groundhog Day. Aziz, a 10-year-old orphan boy in a village in Burkina Faso, built his own ukulele. I would play my ukulele at night for children, and one day he came so excited to show me the ukulele he built so that he could play with me. He built it with an aluminum can, a wooden board, and got 2 pieces of metal wire to have enough tension that it played a note when plucked. Granted, you could only play the one note, but I was so impressed with him. Made it that much sadder knowing he would never go to school, and that I had to leave him behind.